how have you been a part of the gallery, your own journey beyond that, and what got you into the art itself. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Hopefully people resonate with it and they respond to it, but they also judge it. And I think it can be a pretty. I've seen many artists.
But there's always a fear that people will see you. People will see you for something maybe you are, something you're not.
Us changing with the times, our personal interests changing. So it's very cool to be a part of something like that and to help that grow.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you. Okay, let's start by why don't you tell us who you are for everyone who's joining us today in this episode? How would you introduce yourself?
My name is Jennifer Rizzo. My focus is emerging contemporary art. So I am a partner at Hashimoto Contemporary. We have a physical space in New York City, which is my primary focus, although you can also find me in San Francisco. And we also have a Los Angeles location where our LA partner kind of handles everything there. So we put on 12 exhibitions a year in each space, plus art fairs in different cities. This year, we're scheduled to be in Mexico City, a couple in New York, and Taipei for the second year in a row, which is very, very exciting for us. So yeah, just, staying busy.
Amazing. Jennifer, let's go a little back before we talk about gallery, all of that. I want to know a little bit about you, who you are, and how did you. We're speaking about present, but I want to go a little bit back in time. What brought you to the gallery? How have you been a part of the gallery? Your own journey beyond that, and what got you into the art itself. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So we'll have to go way, way back. I would say my interest in the arts has been since childhood. My parents always say when I was 5, I was drawing, I was painting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bob Ross, but I have clear memories of putting his show on. Yeah, and doing watercolor paintings because I didn't have oil paints at 5. But I remember he would say cerulean blue, and I'd be like, blue. Oh, absolutely. And then I would get very disappointed when it didn't look just like his painting. But always very invested. Yeah. Very invested in the arts from the start. I was very lucky and fortunate to have parents who supported that. And they always just encouraged me to follow whatever path I wanted. So from a pretty young age, I knew I wanted to be in the arts. At one point, I thought it maybe was as an artist. I realized that it wasn't quite the right fit for me. I feel like you have to be pretty brave to be an artist and have pretty thick.
Oh, you were following his instructions.
Yeah, I think so. It's a piece of you out there in the world, and hopefully people resonate with it and they respond to it, but they also judge it. And I think it can be a pretty. I've seen many artists with their shows at the gallery on opening night how excited they are, but how terrified they are at the same time. And it always works out. It's always a wonderful experience.
I always feel like, I always keep saying this. I feel like when you put your work specifically out in the world, it's like going naked, because you have this fear like people will see you no matter how people first build a facade, depending on how they treat their creativity. But there's always a fear that people will see you. People will see you for something maybe you are, something you're not. It's like you're open to judgment.
Right. And that's the intention to an extent too, right? You put it out there so people see, so people connect, but at the same time, people are going to see me. So it's like a double-edged sword, I think. But I went to college. I'm from New York. I went to college in New York City, FIT, which is a fashion school.
Yes. Oh, wow. That we have in common.
Yeah. Yes, I figured you might know. But I did my undergrad in fine arts, mostly just to get.
So you did have an idea that you probably would want to be an artist. You did think about that.
I was thinking about it, but I think at that time it still felt more just I wanted a well-rounded understanding of the whole picture of things. So in order to know how to speak about a painting, you should know how to more or less make a painting, right? You may not know all the details, but have an understanding of material, have an understanding of oil versus acrylic. So at around 16 or so, I had kind of said to myself, well, I think I want to work in a gallery. And looking back,
Wow. Were you exposed to the gallery world, the whole art world by that time?
that's what's so funny to me looking back now. I had gone to museums and ever since I was very young, but not so much galleries. But I don't know why. I sort of got it in my head. I'm like, well, this is where living artists are. I want to work with people who I can make an impact with now. So galleries. I was like, well, I'll figure out how to get there and I'll figure out what that means. And so I'm in college and FIT had a program, a master's program it was called Art Market. And it's all the fundamentals of how to work in the contemporary art world within the current market. So that was sort of my ultimate destination in terms of my education. And I was in the program. At the time, it was a very, very small world. And I think there were 8 people who graduated in my class. And, each class was like 6 people, 8 people. Now this is a pretty well-known career path too. But yeah, intense and niche, very niche. So beyond that, started doing internships and kind of checking all those boxes. And eventually I landed my first job at a gallery as a gallery assistant. It was called Jonathan Levine Gallery. It's currently rebranded as Jonathan Levine Projects because their mission has sort of shifted at this point. But I learned all the foundations there. I would say I was there about 7 years and worked my way up to, very long path, worked my way up to associate director. So from assistant to director and learned the ins and outs. And that was sort of everything I was doing before landing here.
Sorry, I missed you. You wanted to work?
Yeah, so at that point, it'd been about 7 years. That gallery was in a transition phase where they were moving to New Jersey. They were focusing more, or wanted to focus more on programming and, kind of step outside of the traditional white walls monthly cycle. And because of the move to New Jersey as well, I'm in Brooklyn, and it just a lot of things were changing with them in my life, and I started thinking, okay, what's next? And I was very clear with myself on the idea that I wanted to be somewhere that the work spoke to me personally. I didn't want to work at a gallery. I wanted to work at the right gallery. So I started, at the right gallery for me, at the gallery where the work excited me, where the artists, I wanted to help. So I started kind of looking around and connected with Ken, who founded the galleries. And at the time, the New York space was a Spoke Art gallery, which is one of our sister galleries. So Spoke Art is fine arts, but also at this point, it's a lot of pop culture programming. So very different from Hashimoto. They do Comic Cons, for example, and they'll do a Wes Anderson art show and, all these like really fun thematic shows. But I started talking with Ken about, the spaces, and it, after a couple of months of conversation, we kind of locked in all the details, and here I was. So about...
How long has it been for you then?
So gosh, at this point, around 8 years maybe? I've lost track. It's been busier than ever. Every year I feel like it gets busier and busier. So
what was your journey like when you joined Hashimoto? Where did you start from? And let's take a little dive into these 8 years of the work that you've done, and how the gallery has evolved for you and your own self.
Yeah, so the New York space was originally a spoke art. About a year and a half into my working at the galleries, we were all having conversations like, well, what if we made it a Hashimoto? And we had, a lot of reasons for that. Our own personal interest in these artists, wanting to provide more opportunities in a different city. At the time, Hashimoto was only in San Francisco. So we decided to try it and made that transition. So the gallery is now Hashimoto, and now I'm a director at Hashimoto. Yeah, and that's what's been really one of the great things about our spaces, I think, is like how much of an evolution I've seen, and it's all felt very organic. It's all been, us changing with the times, our personal interests changing. So it's very cool to be a part of something like that, and to help that grow. Because since the galleries moved here, and then eventually we opened an LA space as well, it's been an upward trajectory. So our following has grown, our artists have grown, we've grown, we've learned a lot as a business and as curators. So
Amazing. What is your favorite part of being in the gallery side of the art world? What still, after all these years, what really um, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I would say one of them has been the amount of personal satisfaction I get when there's a young artist who's maybe very under the radar. And, sometimes you just see someone's work and you feel there's something here, there's something really special. I see this and I want to see if I can do anything to help, to help them, put them on a bigger platform. And not only can you do that, but you see other people connecting with the work. And I think that's like an incredibly gratifying moment. And I feel very grateful to be able to do that, because especially like looking back on what why I originally set out to do this, that's exactly it. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was, a teenager. Like, where do I fit into this whole world? So I would say that's really great. Obviously, getting to sit with an artist's work for a month is so cool. We transform the space every month, so you get to live with this work before it heads off to its new homes, and that's so great. Learning about a whole body of work, especially when it's a solo show, and kind of diving into all of the intentions that are behind it, and the process and the behind the scene. It's like all of that's so gratifying. And I mean, it can be a very challenging industry, I think, for the artists, for the gallerists. But yeah, I feel very grateful to be a part of it at the same time. Yeah.
Amazing. Tell me something, with your own experience of working with different artists. What do you think? Let's talk about the good and bad both. What do you think is the biggest problem when it comes to artists approaching galleries, the way they look at galleries? And we all know the struggle of selling art. And what has your experience so far been with our working artists? Different stories, if you have anything to share. I'm sure we have different experiences always. That's always a good story to tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can be challenging for artists, because obviously being proactive is important, right? Putting your name out there is important. And how do you do that? And I would say, so for example, the gallery does not accept submissions. That's our official policy, simply because if we did, it's all we would do all day long is review the submissions, and we just don't have the bandwidth, and it's not something we're interested in making a business. It should come from a more natural, organic place. So it's just, the policy is we don't accept it. But we always open the emails and we always look, because realistically, we're doing ourselves a disservice if we just delete it. We're here to look for new artists and provide that platform. So that requires looking everywhere, everywhere you are.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but I would say that taking the time to for the artist, taking the time to think to yourself, where do I fit? I love this gallery, but does my work fit there? So for example, we don't really show photography, and it's not because we don't enjoy photography. It's just something that's never been in our program. A lot of photography galleries are photography galleries. It's almost like its own specialized thing. And, I may get and this has happened very frequently, like I may get a submission for absolutely beautiful landscape photography. Now it's stunning work, but I can't help you. I can't do much for that. So, and it's almost a waste of artist time too, because instead of essentially just doing like the cold call, take the time to do the research and take the time to see where you fit today and where you'd like to be tomorrow. And I think that would be really helpful. And then, there can be little things within that, like take the time to go on the website and find out what our names are. And so don't address the email to Hashimoto. I think.
Yes. And do never CC everyone the same email. God.
All the rest of the galleries, right? And these things are little, but when you add it up, it is a relationship, right? So I think it's not ill-intentioned. Like an artist wants that relationship with the gallery, but it's a two-way relationship. So I think remembering that, it's like, well, you want both, you want to treat kind of like the relationship from the start as the possibility of that. So all those little things, I would say, for anyone who lives in a city that has a space that they're interested in showing their work, trying to be a part of that, going to openings of other artists in that space, maybe introducing yourself one day, maybe not at the opening if it's super busy and people are running around, but on a day that it's open to the public, taking a minute to say, hi, my name is whoever, I'm an artist, I love your programming. I think those little bridges can help a lot. And it also helps build community, which is important for all of us, right?
More people showing up, supporting each other, going to openings. I think that is a very big one. Often a lot of people, when it's just because I think a lot of times when we tell people, okay, go to openings, I see a lot of people really pushing themselves on other people. Specifically, it feels really odd and impolite when there's someone's having a busy day, something that's also an important day. It's an important day for the galleries, for the artists, everyone, and it just does not. It's like building a relationship. You meet someone, you say hi, you wish them well, support them, and the next time you meet, you introduce yourself, whatever.
Exactly. And I know that can be hard, right? Like I'm naturally introverted. So that seems like, oh, you're telling me to go out and speak to a bunch of strangers? Like, no, thank you. But I think, being a nice person in the world and operating like that and walking around as a nice human being, that takes you a long way in life. So same applies here, right?
Yeah. But tell me something. How as a gallery over the years have you been able to define, okay, this is an artist that probably, let's say, you've seen. We'll talk about both things. How do you actively find out a good match? It's like matchmaking, right? Being a gallery, you have to figure out figure out two parts of the business. One is the artist you want to show, the collectors you want to build, I think. But how do you really specify, okay, this makes it good, and how do you actively find the artist that you feel, do you have like an internal checklist, something that you feel is necessary for this stage? And how as a gallery also you're defining this visual language and this genre that you want to be known for, and specifically someone who, let's say, is maintaining multiple galleries, running multiple shows at a time, all of that?
So in terms of our overall vision for the gallery, I think what makes us very unique in that is that it's very instinctual amongst myself, Dasha, our LA partner, and Ken, who founded this space. So I think there's naturally a lot of places where our interests overlap. And then there's places where, Dasha will bring in an artist that maybe I might have overlooked, but there's something there. And then same with myself. And so we've created this language like very organically on what kind of comes into the gallery. And then there's sometimes an artist where one of us presents it to the others and we're all like, oh, 100%, absolutely. We all fall in love immediately. But it's been very intuitive, and I think that's pretty special. And I don't know how common something like that is, but I'd like to think it's something rare we have between the three of us. But in terms of finding artists, it's been everywhere. I think all of our jobs is, again, to always be looking at art and thinking about it, and specifically
How, let's say, if somebody, if someone who's listening, both the ends, because we have people who are also, early gallery owners, creative entrepreneurs, but also a lot of artists. So I'm trying to understand how we can help both of those kind of audience. One, um, someone who says, let's say, I'm a good match for Hashimoto, right? Now, how do I figure out, um, let's say for you, I'm an ideal artist, but what is that ideal artist? What is your process of, let's say you're doing a new show, you're building your rooster. Where do you begin your process, like, so that, yeah.
So I think a good example of that would be sort of our larger scale exhibitions, because a couple of times a year we'll take on these really ambitious shows with about 80 artists. And, so the most recent one I did was this past summer, and it was called Lush, and it was a floral themed exhibition. And I think I came in around 79 or so total artists. And it was a mix of, represented artists with the gallery, exhibiting artists with the gallery, brand new artists who have a track record of showing in spaces, brand new artists who have never, and this is their first gallery show. And one thing I really enjoy about doing a show like this is that I can take those risks, and it feels like a very comfortable way to do it, because a lot of the pressure is off of everyone by doing that, right? So it provides that opportunity. In terms of where I've found it, one artist so we just had a solo show with Danam Kwan in San Francisco. Yeah, so that show just closed last Saturday, and I found her. She started following me on Instagram a few years ago. And at the time, she had about a couple of hundred followers. She wasn't, someone who was like on many radars. And I was just like, there's something really tender and gentle about these pieces. And I think they're really lovely and special. And a lot of times I'll just save something. I have like these little folders on my Instagram, and like my little art folder for this kind of work and that kind of work. And I'll save it and kind of think about it for a while. And we had a good group show opportunity that came up, and, things had just been flowing for a couple of years with her, that we finally felt like we were at a point where we could offer this solo show. And it was a really beautiful body of work that she built, like very sensitive. And, I think that's one of those moments of like, oh, wow, like you really were able to make these connections and make this happen.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest part in this process of working with the artists? I think you've worked with tons of them over these years, I'm sure. I don't want to put a number that won't justify. But what do you think is the hardest? I know you have lots of good things to say, and we'll definitely talk about that. What do you think is the biggest barrier, that you feel that comes in artist own growth, and when you also work with other artists, that becomes hard?
I mean, I think because a lot, artists are creative, a lot of times when it comes down to like deadlines and organizational things, the thing is, it's tricky, right? Because an artist is meant to be focused on the work. And so here I am telling you, okay, well, I need this by this date and this by that date. And that can not for everyone, but sometimes that can be challenging, especially as we get closer to the exhibition, as, nerves start to rise. I've had shows where an artist doesn't really share images with me until the very end. And, I've been asking, but they just like don't ever turn up. And then post-exhibition, oh, well, I was scared to share it. And, I feel so bad in those moments. It's like, I do try to be accessible, and I always give my phone number out. Like, anything we need to discuss, feel free to call me. Feel free to text me. Like, this should be a very open door and a very open dialogue. I think that's when it works best, when you feel comfortable as an artist and I feel comfortable as a gallerist telling you what I need, and vice versa. It is a two-way street. But I think me saying that and someone actually believing it to be true can sometimes be, especially if it's the first time we work together, right? So that can be a little tricky at times, but it's never been anything that we can't handle. I always say there's never been a show that hasn't opened the day and time that it's supposed to open. So we make it work. Does it make my job more challenging? Yeah, it does sometimes, but we make it work.
But okay, so you use Instagram to find new artists?
I have used Instagram a lot. Dasha and myself are constantly saying, like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And just like our DMs are full of artists.
I'm going to bring you one for us as well.
Yeah, I look at a lot of submissions. So like Create Magazine would be one of them, or like New American Paintings. And then like, I would love to see it, yes. But just always looking, and always looking at other galleries that I admire, not necessarily to work with those artists, but even just to see what are people thinking about? What are artists working on? What is the bigger conversation that we're all trying to have here?
No, that I think makes sense. Now let's also talk about, as a gallerist, someone who's progressed your career in the gallery side of the world, what do you think has been your biggest hurdle, your biggest learning curve, your biggest?
I think I think it's been similarly, again, to an artist's path, to trust that what I am putting out into the world is something that will resonate with other people. I think in part, originally why I chose this path was because I could take a slight step back from being so forward. But especially the last year, I feel like I've found myself more and more in a forward position as time has gone on, and sort of just trusting my voice and trusting my instinct, and then believing that it will mean something to people has been one of the biggest personal challenges for me, but also especially the last couple of years, the most satisfying one, to see it coming together and feeling more comfortable with that, like feeling more comfortable that if I see something and I think to myself, yes, that, or let's do this, like that's going to work. So just trusting that voice has been a really big challenge for me, but what I'm working on, yeah. How about you? How do you feel as an artist has been one of your struggles?
I think for me, you've asked me a good question, because I was about to ask you one that really relates to this. Being a business owner, being an artist, and being, on the curation side of the things as well. I think for me, I feel as a business owner, I feel very exposed, because at the end of the day, I feel like, the work that we do it's because we're in the creative field of, a lot of our work is like a creative canvas. We're constantly like, getting crafty, and like, like the mistakes that you can see through it. Like, you can really, when you look at people and the work that we're doing, you really can. Similarly, I think there's a little difference, I keep bringing this up in different episodes in different way, but I keep telling this because this is a very big part. I lost my mom in COVID, and no, that's okay. I really, I really took art. I think I felt exposed in all different. For me, I feel like I have 3 canvas. Via my art, I was really able to hide in. And I was able to make a choice that I really did not wanted to put my art out there, because it was a way for me to really, it was so personal that I did a solo show that was a note to her after 1 year on her death anniversary. And I still remember that day that it felt like I was telling the world how miserable I feel, or like putting my grief out in the world. Or even though it was a celebration, it wasn't a sad show or any of that. But I felt so seen that it really like hit me. And I, on the contrary, when I see myself as a business owner, even though I'm constantly, the work I do as a woman entrepreneur, Arts to Hearts is all about womanhood. My work, um I use a pseudo name called Modern Maharani for my art, which is extreme. Everything is about womanhood. Ever since my mom passed away, um, everything that I do only has one story: womanhood, purpose of helping other women and making women more seen, and supporting each other, all of that. And for me, my culture, with my own art, my culture makes a big role. And I figured like how my business was able to help me hide. It wasn't, of course, I felt seen in the way that I was constantly meeting people and like, but it was a canvas that necessarily didn't have my feelings into it. But when I put myself out there as an artist, even though no matter how much conceal, I knew I wasn't ready, but I really wanted to do this. But I felt like I was showing the world you know how even every day today, I feel like whenever I'm making my art, I'm showing the world that my mom's passing away has changed me forever. But also being on the podcast, I keep, like I said, there's no episode that I don't talk about it, because my life has really like, so I really sometimes feel that, even you being a curator, I'm sure your life, and this is something I keep saying on the podcast, our life is an extension, our art is an extension of the life we live. And no matter anything we are creating, if you're curating a show, I feel like you're still responding subconsciously. That happened in your own life, your own experiences. Just just the degree of how personal that is, I think that's the only, I don't know that.
Right. That could be challenging. I mean, there's a lot of intimacy with that, right? And once it's out there, we're in a time where it's permanently out there, right? So once you let the world know, there's no turning back from that. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what, I've also realized, it does feel extremely vulnerable to share yourself via your art. But I also feel there's a huge learning curve as an artist. Every day as an artist, I think there's a learning curve that no matter what you're doing, it's you, but you also understand that one point you have to let it go. Like you have to let it go. Your intimacy, I think the more artists expose themselves, the more free they become of the fear of judgment, the more free they become. Ever since I did that show with for that dedicated to my mother, I think after that my art really, and it has evolved and evolved, and it's really like now I know, now I don't have that fear of, and I had that fear at the first time because that was a very sensitive, and I feel like artists have that issue when you're making art with something extremely personal. It does get a lot tricky, I can definitely. So yeah, I do agree with the fact that as artists, sometimes, not all, I don't think I have done that always. Some, I've made art that hasn't been like, okay, it's going to hit me on a nerve, that's going to break me down. Not really, not always. But my life changed in a way that now a lot of the work that I do make has, because it's a way for me to process my experience. But now I think art also teaches you how to deal with it. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, those can be the pivotal moments, right? Within personally and for your practice.
Yeah. You tell me something. Okay. Someone who's feeling stuck in their career, I think, and this is a very genuine place I want to ask, because I truly, if I could, I wish, and that's why I feel like social media is such a um, such an amazing place. At least it provides artists a place to you know em- express themselves, to maybe make a living out of it. There's so many, and we do not have as much galleries, dealers, consultants to really be able to support the art ecosystem, the number of artists we do have. But I do also understand that not everybody is a social media kind of artist, because it does take another layer of exposure and vulnerability. Like, yes, for me,
It's a full-time career at this point. Especially with the new algorithms and everything. It's not what it was 10 years ago, to build your following. So.
not even that, Jennifer, what's even, I'll tell you, I was pretty much active before my mom passed away 2 years ago. I was very much active on Instagram. I was still not I was still not as inhibited to share so much of myself, because you know it didn't feel as painful or as too much. Ever since her passing away, I think it just became so hard for me. Now it has become so hard for me. I have a team who manages social media with us, for Arts to Hearts and everything. But for my own art, I just knew I didn't have it in me to put myself so much out there, because it was extremely sensitive for me. And I understand, and with overload of information, it was hitting me in a point where I felt like, this is not going to help me. And I know that a lot of artists have started to feel that way, that constantly being overexposed. What is your suggestion for people who feel like, maybe, I think social media is excellent route for people to, you know if they can, but a lot of artists also do not want to go. Let's say someone's an introvert, someone's not really great, and they want to find a good compatible gallery, or start their career, or at least get into the next steps. What is your suggestion for them?
I mean, I would say I do think social media is a blessing and a curse. It is. It does feel, and even for the gallery side, it's a very important tool we have. It's also a tool that can be very challenging, because you're constantly having to keep up with these things that I personally didn't know anything about 5 years ago. I have to figure out algorithms. We have to figure out, now Reels is the new thing that, the platform is pushing. So now it's not even just about this, okay, great, I have to take one beautiful still photo. I can wrap my head around that. Now I have to make these curated videos. And I'm sure many artists listening in have made them, but they take half a day. If you make a very well done, we've made them for the galleries, and it takes a very long time. And okay, now you have to find the song that's trending, but and it's like this whole other thing for artists who were able to build their following, a few years ago, when it was a little bit more of an organic platform, where if things were getting likes, or things were getting comments, they would show it to more people. It's no longer that model. So now it can be more challenging for anyone coming in at this point. But yeah, unfortunately, I think in terms of at least the social media tools we all have at our disposal, it does feel like the most appropriate one for the arts at this time, because it is the most visual.
let's help let's help people a little bit more. Okay, what a lot of artists feel extreme. Oh, we have so many of these questions. Artists feels really tossed between what kind of work should they be posting, what their social media should look like, so that they can attract the right audience. Now, let's say someone like you, who's actively looking creative work, just to even catch someone's attention, what is your mindset? What kind of, do you prefer artists showing reels? Do you prefer what are your suggestions on let's help people a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think this may or may not be helpful, actually, because I think what it needs to be is authentic. I think um, it's very clear when something is forced or overtly posed, or, and frankly, sometimes those things work out for those artists. But in terms of me and what I'm looking for, I want it to be authentic. I am not so interested in what an artist looks like, although I'm happy to see their lovely faces, but I want to see the work, and I want to see more posts about the work than an artist posing beautifully in front of a canvas, right? And I think we see now more and more of those accounts these days of just like the very aesthetic, kind of almost awkwardly posed, but it looks fantastic. And it's like, well, that's not real. And sometimes it does make me question the authenticity or the reason why are we doing this, right? So I want to work with artists who exactly.
What attracts you the most? It are these detail shots, installation shots, work in progress. Um,
Right. I mean, I think a mix of all of it. If there's, I love a behind the scenes studio shot. I love when an artist tells me a story about what's going on, especially if it's someone who I haven't worked with that I may not be so familiar with what their work is about. I love the details of why you're making this work. And I think people like that. And people love, I mean, myself included, everyone loves a behind the scenes. Everyone loves to know what's going on. What is the studio like? What is, how do you work? What is your space like? And for anyone who is working on a body of work, putting that, or maybe, an installation shot of when the gallery is installing the show, and any content like that can be, I think, interesting. But it is, again, a tricky situation because your job is meant to be focused on the work. But I think it's one of the many things that as time progresses and technology evolves, we have to all progress. Yeah.
I love that. We have to pick up. Yeah, but I think they're always like, I love Ritika Merchant. I don't know if I'm sure you must have heard about her. She's an artist from India. She's really amazing. She was a cover artist for first issue of the magazine, and she's been with Kristen's gallery. She's shown her work all around the world. She's like one of the really I think she won the Vanguard, Artsy Vanguard also. Yeah, I think Ritika was on the Vanguard. Yeah, so I was speaking to her, and she's extremely shy, and we were speaking about how Instagram and all of that, and she had the Chloe collaboration, and imagine, out of all places, which I feel like in Pinterest is an amazing place for sure, Natasha actually found her via Pinterest, her work on Pinterest. And if you look at her feed, she doesn't do the reels, etc., etc. She just has a scan of her artwork, and her feed looks stunning. Honestly, I love it. And that's a guide to someone. That's a guide for an introvert, someone who doesn't want to put themselves out there, can actually take that route.
Absolutely. An artist that we've worked with in the past had a collection with Gucci many years ago, because she was tagging, at the time, Alessandro Michel was the designer and the creative director, and she was tagging him in her posts, and he saw it. So and talk about like the most kind of roundabout way.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like, like I said, now we come back to the point that you actually said, that was authenticity. Because a lot of times, there's so many people tag us every day on different posts and something. And I think what I do appreciate sometimes is when people do tag us, it does take courage. Like you said, it does take courage to, okay, tag Alessandra and, look at my work. Yeah, but which is great. I think what misses sometimes is that, again, like you said, a little bit of research. If someone who's tagging us, there's something, if I'm open my post and gone there and seen something, um I feel like a little research, a little something that you liked about us, or like or there's an inspiration, or there's something that, that really helps you build a connection that could take it forward.
Absolutely. Something that makes you feel that this is specific to you, right? It was, oh, I want to work with you, not just with a person, right?
Yeah, it's not like randomly. I hate the part when there are artists who, who would randomly tag mm, X amount of accounts just like that, and I'm like, I like to, even if you're tagging me, I'd really like it to be intentional, and I'd love if there's something fruitful that comes out of it. Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. It was so nice to have you.
I mean, I don't believe so. If there's anything you'd like me to dive in on further, I'm happy to do so, though.
Absolutely my pleasure. Any last tip that you have to share with us? Any last bit that you want to share with us if I have missed anything?
I mean, I don't believe so. If there's anything you'd like me to dive in on further, I'm happy to do so, though.
One last piece of advice, if you have, for all of us, for me, for everyone who's listening, anything. As actually, this is not for artist specific. I was about to ask this question. Okay, let me do this. So you're a who woman entrepreneur, and I feel like artists, curators, we're all in the same places. We just have different canvases and logistics of the work we do. We're all um, people who are trying to make creativity one of our main ways of expressing. What is your own any piece of advice for creative entrepreneurs, artists, just women who are in the creative world today, be it in different roles? What is your advice for them, and how has your own experience been? That I promise this will be my last.
Um, now, happy to keep chatting. I think any project that I've been a part of that I've been most proud of has been something that has felt like it was a piece of me in some capacity. So, and a show I've curated that was personal, or a theme that I really personally felt invested in diving into. And I think, again, just keeping that authenticity and following that voice and challenging yourself. So for example, that floral show I mentioned that I did earlier this summer, it was the third year in a row that I've done that show. And I think it made...
I love that. We're also doing a floral book, a specific book that is on floral. Yes.
Oh, amazing. Well, we should talk about florals some more. I'm sure we both have a lot of inspiration and overlap. Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, thank you. But with each show, before the second show and before the third show, I thought to myself, why am I doing this again? And how do I make it better than the last time I've done it? And I think constantly pushing yourself, and sort of that, not in a negative way, but being critical of yourself, challenging yourself, pushing yourself to dive deeper into whatever it is you're working on is very important. And I would say constantly kind of doing that push is a good piece of advice for myself and for people in general.
I love. No, that is an incredible advice. Thank you so much. Okay, before I let you go, is there anything that you want to share with us in the sense of the project that you're working, something, any new show, what's up with the gallery, how people can find you, support you?
So we're quite busy this year as usual. I'm very excited to be going to Mexico on Sunday. So we have a Zona Maco with Carlos Rodriguez, solo booth of a Mexico City artist. So that'll be next week. And then, my focus for the next few months is art fairs. So following that, we are participating in the Outsider Art Fair for the first time with Abigail Goldman, she makes miniature dioramas of murder scenes. They're very lovely, domesticated, almost like 1950s little dioramas. But when you take a closer look, they're these brutal little murder scenes, and kind of watching someone's reaction to immediately being charmed, because from a slight distance, it's very charming work. And then going in, and then you see them like physically move back and then go back in again is so fun. So I'm very excited to be bringing her work to the fair, and then a couple of other projects that we have on the horizon. So yeah, super excited for that. And yeah, you can check us out at Hashimoto Contemporary, either online or on Instagram. So.
Perfect. I will make sure that we link all the details in the show notes, and make sure that you can find a lot more details in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was so nice speaking to you, and we'll have a floral one for sure. Okay, we'll bring you back when are you curating this next?
The floral show? Gosh, I'm actually taking a pause because it might be finished. A part of me hopes it's not, but if it comes back, it needs to come back stronger. Yes, and so I'm taking a break. We'll see. Maybe it'll be in a couple of years, but I'll definitely let you know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I hope to see you soon.
Bye.